Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Metaworld News. It is the week ending the 18th of March, 2018. Right, this news covers everything going on really in social virtual worlds, particularly the hypergrid, which connects many worlds together. And also, we do look a bit at new VR tech and developments and things like that in the overview. We're not going to tell you about every new version of every new headset out there. So you can follow a general feed that accompanies this show. You go to twitter.com/Malburns, that's MALBURNS. And there's an additional feed I will give you a little bit later on. I have on screen here a sort of roundup of my highlights from that feed, and that's what you're going to be hearing right now. So I'm going to start effectively. Well, they were in a bit of an order, but roughly a week ago. Google have revealed what they call the world's highest resolution OLED on a glass display for VR headsets. And, it says Google to reveal, I should say, because they won't be actually revealing it till May. You can find a post all about that, however, at a site called roadtovr.com. That's roadtovr, all one word, and then .com. Right, moving a bit further forward. Oh, that was clever. Sorry, I just managed to click away from what I need. Aren't you phone windows? Sorry about this, folks. I should be using a scroll wheel instead of my arrow key. Right, okay, moving back a page. Here we are. Right, 7 ways virtual reality is improving healthcare. This may have been mentioned on last week's show. This is a post at uploadvr.com. That's uploadvr.com. And just a summary of basically various ways that healthcare is making use of virtual reality technologies. BOSE, we did do this one last week, so I shall.
That's right.
BOSE.
BOSE Corporation.
Yes. Yeah, I remembered it because I wasn't sure of my pronunciation. So, I've done that already. Forget it.
BOSE like nose.
BOSE like nose. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, well, it's a Bose glasses and they fit on your nose. So
exactly.
Bose for the nose. Anyway, moving on. Microsoft, who are they? Shows new research in haptics with something called CLAW, C-L-A-U, A-W rather, a VR controller prototype. And it looks like a contraption, as it would be. You find out more about this at roadtovr.com yet again. Look at the photo of this. It really does look a bit like a gun. Many years ago, I had a Philips CDI machine, which is compact disc interactive before DVDs and everything. You could see video CDs on it, but it had a few games and art galleries, and I liked it. It was sort of fairly upmarket. But it came, you could go and buy a thing to go with it called an air gun. Now, this was a wired contraption, whereas Microsoft's picture here doesn't show any wires. But you really held it like a gun. And obviously, that was great for shoot-me-up games and things. But you kind of realize how people like guns. I don't, gun control and all that, shooting stuff. But the actual design of a gun is actually fairly obvious. You can hold it the way you imagine you hold a gun. You've got 2 different buttons on the side, and then the equivalent of clicking on things is pulling a trigger. So this actually, despite the connotations of a gun, it's actually a very good kind of haptic device in this way. And I can't really tell you much more about this Microsoft thing at all. It's got bells and whistles built on either side where the hand is holding it. But do check out roadtovr.com for a little bit more about that possible device. Yet more and more input devices seem to come our way every week. Right. Okay, right page again. Okay, a blog called Virtuality. It's just virtuality.blog. In other words, it's virtuality.blog. Right? 3 reasons why blockchain may not be the best solution for online game payments and protections. And this post was actually written by our friend Adam Frisby from Sciencebase. He does obviously mention Sciencebase in the course of the article, but basically he is his feeling is that the blockchain sort of idea for game payments and protections may not be quite what it seems to be. It may not be the ideal way of handling assets and in world currencies. So there was a bit of controversy over that, because obviously a few people who are promoting blockchain read it and immediately disagree with him. But that's life. That's life when you're expressing an opinion. More of those to come in a minute. Right. Decentralizing identity in VR with HoloNet and self-sovereign identity. This is Kent Bai writing at roadtovr.com again. And he's talking about something called HoloNet, which is actually an open source project that implements decentralized identity specifications for web VR platforms. This is not blockchain, by the way. It's a decentralized identity specification for people who might be jumping between worlds that are built with web VR, basically. Right. We saw the news. I don't think it opens in Britain here till the end of the month, but somebody told me it had already opened in America. The Ready Player One movie, based on, well, it's a Spielberg movie, and it's based on Ernest Cline's novel. Apparently people have seen it. It is actually getting pretty good reviews, which is a good sign, because as somebody pointed out to me recently, not every Spielberg movie takes off. There have been, he too has had his flops, but apparently this is going down quite well, especially people who compare it with the book, because apparently Spielberg has reinterpreted the book, so that a lot of the cultural references that you find in the book are actually, he's been able to put extra cultural references to his own movies in.
You think?
Yeah, as a way of making it a more cinematic thing, and because obviously some of the game references would be lost on the mainstream cinema.
Yeah, in my generation, we called that product placement.
I think I call it product placement too, but I mean, if it's your own product, placing your own product, I think maybe some artistic license can be allowed.
I'll have to see the results, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether E.T. makes a cameo appearance or not. Who knows?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Anyway, there's an article saying Ready Player One VR games show the future is now. Quite an interesting article, which somebody called Jessica Condit wrote it, and you'll find it at a site called engadget.com. That's engadget.com. And the success of a movie like that, of course, means a greater public awareness of virtuality and indeed virtual worlds of all sorts, really, what it's all about, so to speak. Right. Voices of VR.com, 6:33 a couple of days ago, has an interview with somebody called Julie Haid on using VR for consensual trolling and personal pain management. And I didn't really listen to this one, but it sounds like a very interesting topic. The photograph that goes with it shows presumably the author wearing a very avatar-like hat and cuddling a real-life horse. Go figure. Right. A day ago to uploadvr.com has an article on something called DataViz. It's a VR startup with a data visualization platform designed to display across all devices using web VR. Those of us familiar with virtual worlds already know of various companies and research labs and things that actually use the virtual world for data visualization. The principle at heart being the fact that you have an extra dimension of data. So whereas you might look at a pie chart or a bar chart, conventionally and have, time versus quantity or something. If you model that in virtuality, of course, you can put a third dimension into the information. And some complex information really gains by that, because somebody analyzing the information, instead of just looking at the bar chart, they can actually walk up and onto the visual, and they can examine that data from, from a three-dimensional standpoint rather than just a standard two-dimensional one. So DataVist is a startup who are actually aiming to bring this kind of technology, which we have seen before, into web VR. That means effectively that you'll be able to go to a web page and enter a space to look at data, instead of going to a website and seeing a pie chart, for example. It's obviously more complicated than that, but anyway, uploadvr.com, article by Ian Hamilton, has a bit more on that. VRscout.com, another post from them. Google's experiment with light fields show the potential of VR. We've heard about various people working with light field technology as a very different way from the current way headsets view VR, because it involves projecting onto your eye as a rule, if I believe. But anyway, Google have been doing some experiments with this. It all tends to be, they've got examples, you'll see them, all the links to them on this site. It differs from 360 video in the aesthetic sense. If you actually watch them, you do see a lot more sort of detail. They look kind of a bit more real than something that's just been filmed as 360 video. Basically, it's I believe it's sort of I'm no techie, but I gather it's it's collecting the data of the object that is being filmed, rather than a visual photographic style capture. And so things like spatial placements and stuff are far more accurate than is seen by just a panoramic camera or video. Anyway, so that all looks very interesting on the technical side. Educational article here from a site called edsurge.com. That's edsurge.com. Somebody called Jeffrey R. Young. VR could bring a new era of immersive learning, but ethical and technical challenge remains. I don't think you need to be involved in education to read this article. I mean, they address things like the obvious things for benefits for disabilities, but also avoiding motion sickness and stuff like that. But clearly they're praising the possibilities of what VR can do, but they are drawing attention to ethical and technical challenges at the same time. And, we see so much online these days where the ethical challenges have not even been considered, let alone some of the technical challenges. So quite an interesting article there. Perpetuity, P-R-P-E-T-U-I-T, perpetuity, I guess. I don't know. Never mind. POMRA is a vital VR project to preserve Syrian culture. This is worthy content department, basically. You'll find the post at uploadvr.com. It's talking about the destruction of Syrian heritage by ISIS and stuff like that going on at the moment. And they say that this destruction is being combated with a new weapon. And that new weapon is, wait for it, VR. Yes. I love historical recreations and things like that, where you can go back to cities that no longer exist and different points in the past. But this is the same idea, but really immediate. In recent years, so much of Syria's heritage has just disappeared due to the wars, destruction, everything else. And so these people are actually endeavoring to preserve it in virtuality. It's a non-profit organization called the ARC. well, they've launched on Kickstarting project on crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter too. Um, it's a bit confusing. They're called the ARC project, but it's spelled the ARC /K, as if they don't know which it is, or maybe it's meant to be both. Go figure. But anyway, you can read about that at uploadvr.com. And yeah, we did the light fields from Google, so we're at the end of that one. Okay, so this time I can press the arrow button. Right. Now, we do have another feed too, which actually goes after the name of the show. This is more to do with events in or news within various social worlds. And that's you'll find at twitter.com, Metaworld News. And I'm just going to open the highlights from that as well. First off, we have a major post actually from hypergridbusiness.com. This is my colleague Maria's writer there, David Karuki. And the title of the post is that Open Sim Land Rally continues. And it is a roundup of some statistics and stuff like that. OpenSim land area. OpenSim, by the way, is the platform that powers all the grids that are connected on the hypergrid. Land area has continued to increase, gaining a total of 3,500 new regions this month. Actually, last month it gained 9,000 new regions, so pretty quite a lot there. But this post actually contains a whole load of other news underneath it. In other words, the post itself seems to actually cover a whole lot of hitherto unseen micro blogs from the last month. So it's well worth checking out this post just to catch up on the other news contained within it as well. Right, now our friends at Sciencebase, Adam Frisby again, I mentioned in the last section, have launched a VR beta. By VR beta, I mean that they have actually launched a version of their client that will actually work in one of those headset contraptions. And I'm going to interrupt here because I believe you've tried this out, James, haven't you? How was the experience?
I just tried it. Actually, just initially the other day, and I thought it was very promising. I didn't have any of the controls figured out, so I could look and move a little bit, but there's a lot more I need to explore. But boy, it was so nice to have something that I considered, you know, a place that I could work and then see it in immersive 3D. It's very nice.
Yeah, I must say I'm very fond of that platform. I'm looking forward to when we actually get our studios over there finished. So we'll be we won't always be coming from here. Very kind of things like lighting and stuff us TV folks are very interesting in. Has extraordinary potential over there. Also good news for me. I was actually sent some screenshots of the new interface. I don't have a headset kit and don't particularly want one, but the other day, and obviously it being a new platform, you have to get used to navigation even on the two-dimensional desktop, as it were. The keys, are different from other games and worlds you might be used to. And obviously when you wear a headset, the idea is you don't touch your mouse or keyboard, so the controls are probably yet another learning curve still. But anyway, being well received, I gather. And oh yes, I was talking, in fact, with Joey Obama just yesterday and Adam a few days ago. It's literally going to be only a couple of weeks before there'll also be an iPad version of this. Now, I do a lot of my work on the iPad. I tend to be over here in my studio for broadcasting and playing with virtual worlds and communications and stuff. But most of the time, I'm conveniently horizontal with an iPad, taking life easy. And the fact that one of my favorite virtual worlds is going to be available on the iPad, well, enough said. I'll be fiddling in there all day in the great comfort of my sitting place, should we say. Right. Okay, so that is all very good news. We'll come back. I will mention a little bit more about this shortly. Another post at hypergridbusiness.com literally covers the latest hypergrid statistics. So if you get there, you can look at all the recent posts, in fact. An article by Ryan Schultz, who writes a lot about virtual worlds these days. You'll find him at ryanschultz.com. That's RyanSchultz.com. And he's got a latest post on which virtual world boasts the highest avatar capacity. Well, it depends on how you view it. I do know the answer to that, but the question is very much part of the article, so I will let you read it. Interesting thing to be addressed by social worlds, really, because many of the old ones, like Second Life and to a certain extent OpenSim here, tend to really run out of steam when you've got more than 50 people logged into the same region. And there are ways some of the newer worlds can address that problem. They have ways of getting larger amounts of avatars into, well, the equivalent of a region. They use sharding. And other worlds, in fact, have such low impact avatars that they can actually hold more avatars in a given region, but they don't look so pretty, for one thing. So, but obviously scaling. I know ScienceBase, for example, who I've just mentioned, can potentially hold a concert with, say, an audience of 100,000 people. It would be quite a massive operation, but it is done through a system called sharding, where the audience is on different servers, but the stage or the actual event is concurrent in all those servers. But it's a technical thing, which I won't go into, but obviously anything to do with packing more people into a virtual environment for a big event and stuff is of interest. Right, let me see. Okay, this is 1 week ago. I don't know whether I mentioned it last week. Linden Labs, the purveyors of the old Second Life platform, have a new platform called Sansar, which has a lot in common with ScienceBase, although nowhere near as far ahead, well, in my opinion. There is a post at a site called viveport.com. That's VIVEPORT.com. Viveport obviously matches the headset called HTC Vive, and basically their announcement is that you can now go into what they call the world's leading social VR platform. World's leading, after how long has it been live? 2 months, and it's now the world's leading social VR platform. Okay, go figure. Anyway, you can get into Sansar via HTC Vive now through Viveport. That's really all I'm telling you. And that seems to be it for that particular feed too. And I'm going to quickly open up my link list here that heads over to the old Google Plus, which tends to be a hangout place for many people in virtual worlds, particularly Open Simulator. Right, I'll just flip ahead here. Right, nothing of great import. Just one post that I put up there. Inara Pay has a blog called modemworld.me. That's MODEMWORLD.me. And she has literally just published Ebbe Altberg at VWBPE 2018 transcript and audio. She also has on the previous blog a link to Ebbe Altberg, who's Ebbe Linden, CEO of Linden Lab, who was interviewed at the Virtual World's Best Practices conference earlier this week. James and I, in fact, were the ones who filmed it. And you can see that on the VWBPE YouTube channel. And if you go to my channel on YouTube, you'll see it's posted in my likes section. Interesting interview it was. The reason I mentioned in ours, Modem World ME blog, is that she has also extracted it into sections of audio only that you can play from the blog page. And she's given a written transcript of everything that was discussed in that broadcast. So you can actually get everything you possibly need in sound and text without even watching our video. But you wouldn't want to miss out on our video, would you? So I shouldn't really have mentioned it. I shouldn't have mentioned this at all.
That's all right. It's all right.
Okay, now additional roundup time. For those of you hoping for an in-world review on this channel in an hour's time, or rather on the hour, it won't be happening again this week. Basically, we have been very, very tied up filming for 3 days with a conference called the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education. The conference actually did happen in the aforementioned Old Second Life platform. And it was just 3 jam-packed days. We filmed keynotes and a couple of things, and both of us, James and I, were attending as part of the audience for just about everything else anyway. The whole thing was filmed to a better or lesser effect, depending on which stream you find different sessions on. But it's very, very interesting. I mean, people like, interestingly, web worlds, as they're called. Singer Girl, for example, had a strong presence there. Dita Hain from Cyber Lounge was there. And Jerry Obama and various others from Science Space were there. So, and there was an awful lot of educational lectures that were actually talking about what they were doing, and although some were in Second Life, of course, there were a considerable number of projects and locations and things being talked about that are actually out here on the open simulator, the hypergrid in most cases. So it's a very wide-ranging conference, way beyond the parameters of the Second Life platform it was actually held on. So very lots of interesting stuff. If we had been able to do a show today and woken up all the exhausted people to do it, well, that's what we would have been discussing. But I think we all need a bit of recovery time, so we're going to take it. And in fact, James and I are going to hop over to Science Space instead of doing in-world review. We're going to go hop over there after the show for a bit of technical snooping. Let's put it that way.
Field trip.
A field trip, yes. We're going on our own little personal field trip. We're taking our holiday. Having just returned from the working weekend in Second Life, mm-hmm. we're out somewhere else still.
Out in the wilderness.
Anyway, at this point in time, I normally hand over to James to get some sort of developer news. The developer news that James reports is normally the Open Simulator Development Group, which is a very specific group of developers who work on the open source code for Open Simulator, which of course is what powers the hypergrid. But I think things are... You're not feeling so happy about all this at the moment, are you, James? So maybe I'll hand over to you to...
Yeah, well, sure, Mal. Yeah, I did attend last week's meeting, and you know, the topics were, I thought, some good discussions again, looking at things like missing map tiles in version 9, and so that triggered quite a good discussion on database and SQL Server issues. And you know, again, it was a good discussion, but I've been thinking over time, and you know, I've talked to you about this also, Mal, that you know, I'm not a developer myself, and so I don't really feel qualified talking about some of these issues. Half the time I'll report things here on the program, and have to say, well, I don't really know what that means. So
yeah,
you know, that's
I know that feeling.
right. And then you know, it is during the work week, and my own hours at my day job tend to interfere a lot of times with the meetings, and so I think I'm probably not going to be going again to the meetings. And then there was one additional thing that I just wanted to mention, and that is I've been talking excitedly, I think, for the past, well, several weeks about this idea of a Patreon, the site where a person can set up an account and receive donations for projects that they're doing. And interesting, at the last meeting on Tuesday, I learned that uh, that there were requests and I guess instructions that all discussion of Patreon had to be stricken from the chat logs. And I'm not going to go deep into what any of that means, other than it just left me as an individual perplexed. And
Yeah.
I'm saying, well, is this in the bylaws of Open Simulator? And it's like, well, there aren't any. Is this in the charter of the organization? Oh, nope, there aren't any. So I just I don't know. It kind of took the wind out of my sails on Open Simulator. So that
Well, I have to say I'm not at all surprised. Patreon is really, artists and I guess developers in the modern age, whatever you call them.
videographers,
Always relied on patrons. Patrons are the people that get things up and running creatively before there's any market for it, and sometimes when there is no market for it, they patronize an artist who spends months working on their painting and then hangs it in a gallery, and if it sells, fine. But the patron really is the one who, they don't commission it in terms of owning it at the end. They simply are the artist's patron. It's to support them, to help them do their work independent of the marketing.
They share an aesthetic and they like what the artist is doing and they want to see them continue.
And the site Patreon is kind of a modern age way where people can log in and look at projects underway and find out about what some people are doing. Sometimes they can only do it through Patreon, but then they can they can make the connection with that artist, developer, or whatever, and offer to if they've got a bit of spare money, they can offer to support them and help them in their endeavors. Now this is very, very, very different from the idea of somebody, a developer, being employed by a company to work on stuff for the company and then subject to the rules of the company and the company's non-disclosure agreements and blah, blah, blah. Open Simulator is very much an open source project, and understandably a lot of the developers working on it do not want to be paid by anybody with a vested interest who might, prioritizing a piece of code just to suit one grid operator, for example. It's kind of contradictory to the open development of a robust, platform that is open for use. But for an individual developer who's doing a lot of wonderful work, accepting a sponsor on Patreon would be a totally different thing. They would be under no obligation. They'd just basically be having a sponsor. And they might be developing work not just for OpenSim, but they might be working on code for all sorts of other places, different things too. So the idea that the personal individual who is defined as a developer, part of one team here, there, or everywhere, is really irrelevant to the fact that somebody likes what that person as an individual is doing and is prepared to sponsor them. It's like running in a race, isn't it? A marathon, you raise money for charities and things, or maybe for yourself, I don't know, by getting sponsors. But the sponsors have nothing to gain out of it. They're not paying you to do a job. Well, they're probably paying you to try and win, but that's, that's part of the course. But they're just showing faith in you, and they've got a bit of spare money to sponsor you with. And that's really what it's all about. No sponsor is going to turn around and say, you didn't win the race, so I want my money back. That's not the idea. So this idea that OpenSim developers, or somebody amongst the OpenSim developers, presumably the person in charge of chat logs, wants all this reference censored, come off it. What is going on with those folks is all I can say. That does not make any sense to me whatsoever. So I agree with you, James. Let them edit their logs and republish them.
I'd say, like I usually say, so go to the opensimulator.org developers section and read the logs, but I guess you can't. I mean, read that particular part of the logs. So.
Now, something that may be of interest to folks, if I haven't mentioned it before, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Uh, Metaworld here, we have a Discord server of our own, which is just like contact list and ways of getting in touch and stuff. But on a whim, really, I started up a new server, a public server called Hypergrid Explorers and Creators. And I grabbed people on Skype and in World and sent them links to this Discord server. And over the course of a couple of weeks, I think we may even be over 100 now. The idea of it is it's a chat room that crosses the entire hypergrid. And although it's devoted to the hypergrid, which is the interconnected worlds, there is a bit of chat and linkage to other platforms too. Basically, Discord is it's an open source, very robust, in many ways better alternative to Skype. In fact, the audio for this show is recorded using Discord. And so, it's like in your tray running as a Skype. But it is also a bit like a modern IRC, Internet Relay Chat, where you've got channels and discussions and things like that. And the server I set up, for example, has different channels for different grids on the hypergrid. It has general channels for talking about anything from education to machinima to general chat to locations to events. And, anybody who joins the server, when they're on the server itself, they're given a role. In my case, the role simply describes what they do best, like machinima, creator, admin. That's me. And anybody who hasn't got a role has got a role called Explorer kind of thing. And one of the failings of the hypergrid is that although you can jump from a home grid to any other grid in the known open metaverse, so to speak, and you can make friends on other grids, sometimes those friends don't show up when they're online. And sometimes groups do not work very well across grids. Although the transport system is very robust, the communication system does seem to have its faults now and again. So we just thought, well, we'll just have this Discord server that can, happily pop up messages to you while you're actually in the world, but otherwise sit out of the way in your tray. And actually connect people on all grids together. So,
and if you're grid hopping and crashing grids, it would be really good for that too.
It is. You can always start up a special temporary channel. So, for example, if we were having problems with the Hypergrid Safari, we could always just tell all the people to watch Discord and watch the Safari channel, so we can keep talking, whether we're lost in the hypergrid limbo somewhere in the wrong location, maybe we've crashed offline, whatever.
Oh yeah.
Because it works independently of the world system, yet allows you to pop up messages in world. Then it's very kind of useful. So I would encourage anybody who is active in any hypergrid enabled world, and the hypergrid itself, of course, to possibly look that up. If you know how to contact me, I can send you an invite, but otherwise you can just go to Google and look up Discord servers, and then the name of the server is Hypergrid Explorers and Creators, and it's open for joining, so you don't have to fill in any forms. You just have to give yourself a nickname, which is like your Skype name. It can be whatever you want it to be, really. Your nickname in the server, by the way, I can change as appropriate. I know. I am the enforcer. I do tend to, but there is a logic in this. I prefer that your nickname on the server is the same as your avatar name, so that people don't get confused by Fred Blogs 82 and a half.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And also I assign the roles, but you can have any role you want. You just got to give me the name of the role and I give it you. But it's just organisation. And unfortunately, I don't feel too bad about being the authoritarian there, because I've had quite a few comments coming in saying how well well organised and managed it is. So good on me, eh?
Yep.
Right. So I thought I'd get that into because anything to do with communication and keeping us all in touch with each other is a very good idea, especially with all these other platforms and endless quantities of new grids and regions coming up and joining the hypergrid. So that's it for me. I think anything else, James?
No. It's I'm looking forward to checking out the sign space and trying. I probably will just stay 2D when I join you there, but I'll be back in the headset again.
Yep. Well,
Sometime
I'll be matching you. I'll be in 2D too.
All
I
right.
forget it was the 3D. So long as I got the 3D in the computer, I really don't need a 3D
On your head. Right.
on my head. Exactly. Okay. Well, thanks for watching, folks. I hope what news we've been able to bring you is useful. And we'll be back with another dose of the same this time next week. So it's bye from him.
And bye from him too.
Yeah, both of us. Hey, very good. We'll see you next week.